Welcome to Constant Variables, a podcast where we take a non-technical look at mobile app development. I'm Tim Bornholt. Let's get nerdy. Today we are chatting with Clare Stead of Oliiki. The Oliiki app empowers parents from conception to age 2 by helping them develop children who are confident, happy learners through the power of play. Clare has a fascinating story, and she's gone from being a lifelong educator to now an entrepreneur, maybe an accidental entrepreneur, and an app mogul. And I am so glad we had the chance to chat today and for me to get to learn more about her and her app. In this episode, we talk about a plane ride to Zambia that altered the course of Clare's life, the educational study that led Clare to creating Oliiki, how important marketing is to the success of an app, imposter syndrome and how to overcome it, the importance of drawing your app out on paper before you get it coded out, and so much more. This is a fun, jam-packed episode, and I think those of you who want to get an app built are really going to take a ton away from it. So, without further ado, here is my interview with Clare Stead. Clare, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Tim, for having me. It's really exciting to be here.
Well, I feel like I should be handing the reins over to you now. You said this is your third podcast, and you're hosting one coming up here pretty soon. So I think you should pretty much be in the driver's seat for this one, right?
Oh, yeah, because I'm a complete pro. Done it thousands of times, all three of them. Yes, indeed.
Well, it's baptism by fire in that case.
It's something like that. Yes.
So we were talking just right before we hit record about the name of your app that we're going to be talking about here, and it's you said that if you're British, it's Oliiki. Or English,
if you're anyone else, who knows what it is? It's basically yes. When you come to choose your company name, that's that real challenge, isn't it? So I knew that I wanted to have a nice round-looking logo that was cozy and friendly, and that my logo would be the name of the company. And then I wanted to make sure that it was I could get the .com. So in the end, I went through all sorts of real names, and forget the .coms unless you've got billions of dollars. So I went to one of those make-up word things, made sure that it didn't fit any language, and Oliiki was born. And it basically, if it's got one I in the middle, Oliki, it means olive in Estonian. If you put two I's, it looks cute, and you can get the .com for 20 quid. Marvelous.
That's not bad at all. Well, I was going to say, like, you have to, that's the thing with made up words is you have to be careful that it doesn't mean something in like Albanian or some Estonian or whatever.
Exactly.
Like, that makes a lot of sense.
So far, I don't think it means anything in any other language, but if anyone listening knows that it does, well, let me know.
Well, and you think that if you could buy the .com, you would think that if it was like a swear word or something meaningful, that someone would have already owned it, just, and put questionable materials on it, just out of just the fact that it's a bad name. But so I think you're in the clear in that case.
One hopes. Yeah.
So tell us about your background. How did you become the app mogul that you are today?
Okay, so I'm a teacher by training, and in fact, I've only ever wanted to be a teacher. But school and I didn't necessarily hit it off as well as we could have done, in that the exam, I had a great time, but the exam results weren't necessarily the ones that everybody's striving for. But I still wanted to be a teacher, and it confirmed that I wanted to be a teacher more, because I wanted to make sure that no other child went through school failing. So I did about 20 years of teaching in the classroom, and I'm trained from 3 to 8, but I worked right the way through from nursery through to the end of primary. And I just loved that. I loved my job. Like, there wasn't a day when I didn't go to school and love it. But the kids that were really exciting for me were those ones who come into school and should be doing really well, but just aren't accessing the learning. And there seem to be a lot of those in every classroom. I taught around the world in various different countries. And then I had my daughter and went back to school, and I only wanted to go back part-time. So in those days, that meant I was a special needs teacher, which I did 3 days of. And at the top of the corridor, so this was the finishing touch, really, for me after day 3. I had year 5 disaffected boys doing persuasive writing on a worksheet that had been given to me by another teacher. And I had reception, so that's 5-year-olds, doing bikes and trikes down the corridor past me. And it was like, this is just not a life ambition.
Not so much.
No, it was completely rubbish. So I phoned up my then county advisor. So those people who used to come in and check how I was getting on and how I was leading the school in IT and English. And I said to her, now I know you're doing something new, don't know what it is, but do you have a job for me? And she said, well, yeah, do you want to start a secondment? So I started the secondment on Monday. And I still didn't know what the job was. This wasn't these days. This was kind of 20 years ago. Anyway, so it turns out I was now an education researcher working with the top 5% of schools in England and Wales, looking for best practice and focusing on what was then called ICT in learning. And I was advising ministry and governments around the world on curriculum content and learning and how to get kids using ICT to make learning more effective. And then I ended up developing some stuff which was called, what was it called? It was called something like, I can't remember. Learning objects, that's right, which I developed for various governments. It turns out these days it's called e-learning, but it didn't have a name in those days. I'm showing my age. And so I made this e-learning content for a couple of ministries around the world, and I kept finding the same thing. So we would go into these schools looking for best practice, and you'd find that group of kids who couldn't access the learning. And then you'd make the e-learning content for ministries and you put it into school, and there'd be a group of kids who couldn't access it. And then my husband announced we were going to go and live in Zambia, which was
a fun proclamation.
Quite random. So we're going to go and live in Zambia. I've got a 2.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old, and I'm leaving the best job in the whole wide world. So you can imagine I'm really chuffed. And so off we head, but I still keep my job in the UK. And I came back to run an international conference for them. And on the way back, I met a man on the plane. Now, we were both British. So obviously, of the 9-hour flight, we sat in silence for 8 hours. And then eventually curiosity killed the cat. And I had to say to him, what is that thing that you're using? And he went, glad you asked, because it's called an e-reader. It's new out of the States. And for those of you who are younger than me, that is a Kindle. And we then discussed all sorts of things, and he told me that he wanted to change the way education took place in Africa. And I asked him how he was going to do it, and he told me, and clearly I shouldn't play poker, because I then showed him the wrong face, and he said, you wouldn't do it my way. And I said, no, I wouldn't. He said, how would you do it? I told him, and he said, come and work for me. So I spent the next 10 years building, putting the whole of primary education on a tablet for African kids to get international standard education, and to enable teachers to move from rote learning to inquiry-based active learning. So we did 12,000 lesson plans and 5,000 pieces of interactive learning content in 9 languages.
Jeez.
And one of those languages we had to write the dictionary for, because we needed to stabilize it because it was an oral language.
So that was like more of a flight than you bargained for then, right?
It was unbelievable, really. It was like a 10-year life sentence. No, I loved it. I mean, I really loved it. And so I made this, and it's now rolling out across Africa. It's a really exciting initiative, and it is changing kids' lives. But the app itself was really quite dynamic, because when we started, we were on netbooks. Then before we could launch, out came these things called tablets. So we had to rework the back end so it could work on tablets before we could launch. So that was a load of cash burnt. And then between starting and finishing, we went from Flash to HTML. HTML5, is it? What is it? Something.
Nailed it.
Yeah. I got it there in the end. And so the costs of making all of these things happen was quite significant. But while I was working, doing all of those things, I'm finally getting there, I promised him.
This is fascinating.
I saw that there was a group of kids who couldn't access the learning that we'd developed, the whole old patter. And it was the same. We had literally followed the government's guidelines. We had literally taken the national curriculum and we had line by line, word for word, created a piece of content for every single thing in the curriculum. So I knew this was the level that the government expected the learning to be at. But I also could see that a whole heap of kids could not access that learning. And at that same time, somebody showed me a graph that came out of the Center of Developing Child from Harvard that showed the learning that happens in the first 1,000 days of life. That is from conception, so before birth, through to 2. And the learning that takes place at that time is unbelievably massive. The brain is going completely bonkers. You've got this massive spike in capability of the brain. Basically, the child arrives in the world hardwired to learn, and they learn through their experiences. And then it begins to sort of fall down quite steeply, quite quickly, and by 5, it's pretty much flatlining. So for me, this was like the light bulb moment, because I now realised this is why all these children, who at the time I was in Africa, so I thought it was an African issue, why these children were not performing at the level. They clearly had capabilities, but they were not achieving at the level that they should and could be performing at. So, as I said, I thought it was an African issue because I assumed that these babies were on the back. Parents weren't interacting with them, not giving them the experiences they needed. So I thought, well, okay, so we can solve the African issue. It turns out that 1/3 of the children around the world won't reach their full potential.
Wow. A full third.
A full third. And in the UK, that's 1 in 5. It's huge.
It is huge, and really having that idea to see that being able to get your kids engaged at an early age and see all the. I was kind of looking at some of the videos you had about how there's like 1 million connections in the brain being formed every second, something like that.
Yep.
God, it's just like, I have an 11-month-old at home right now, and it's like I can see, he's getting to be more interactive, but you can just see him like staring at something, trying to process it, and it's like I can almost watch those 1 million being formed as he's just staring at it.
And right now what he's doing, this is when I started getting really excited, when I started really diving into the science behind it. What he's doing is taking he's born as a child of the world. He will be born, as with any other child, with the ability to speak any language. But between the ages of 10 months and 12 months, he's taking statistical analysis of the vowel sounds that you speak and binning any he doesn't need. And he does that because you naturally will speak to him in a sing-songy way. You go, hello, how are you? And that sort of baby tone that we talk to babies in, it's called motherese. And what it does is it slows the vowels down to enable the babies to hear the vowels. It's like wowie stuff. When you start looking into it, it really is amazing. So that's when I started realizing that we needed to do something to help this 1/3 of the children in the world reach their full potential. And I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, well, here we are. I'm focused at school level at this point. I realized then that I need to shift my focus and help these parents, because if you're a parent, you have no training. If you get a dog from the pound, a rehome dog, you have to get vetted and you have to get checked that you're good enough and you've got the right situation and all the rest of it. If you have a baby, all they care about is, can you feed it? Is the home stable? And are you building some form of loving relationship? That's kind of it. Off you go. There's no training. There's no support for who you become, what you need to do with this baby, what interactions you give the baby, none of that. And so it's actually this whole period of time where mothers particularly lose confidence, but the science is showing that actually fathers do too. You have this massive life change, and there's not really any support for it. It's not about what parenting style you want to have, but what I have done is developed an app that puts education at the centre from the day your baby's conceived, so that you are thinking about the child that you are both, if you're doing it together, aiming to raise. So, for example, have you ever discussed with your partner whether or not, what's the aspirations for your baby? I know what my aspirations are for my baby, but do I know what my husband's aspirations are? So,
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's quite a lot of conversations that you just don't have, and things that you, like, before you have the baby, have a look around at other people in the workplace and try and unpick. The Oliiki app that I built in the end helps parents do things like unpick the social elements of a conversation.
This is awesome, because I think you can hear the passion, and especially given the history that you have in this space, it's such a needed app. And one thing I was thinking about while you were talking was, I know, so again, like I'm fresh out of having a newborn,
yeah.
and I have my second kid, so it's like, and being an app developer myself, the first thing that I did when I heard my wife was pregnant was, okay, well, what apps do I need? Yeah. and so I was thinking, like there's so many good apps out there, like the Wonder Weeks. There's a bunch of different kind of, in the similar words, using science to help explain what's going on and kind of helping you do the right things so that your kids are moving in the right direction. In terms of marketing, like how do you market the app like that? Like how do you get out there and shove this app in people's faces? Because people need this, and parents need this, and more importantly, the kids need it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, how do you differentiate yourself from other people? And my differentiator is, for me, it was really important that I understood why. So if I understand what learning my child is getting from their daily play, first of all, for me, it's all about success breeds success. So I need to help parents feel confident and happy about what they are doing, so that if they're successful, they are more engaged and more connected doing the activities, and therefore the baby is benefiting more out of it. But for me, that's about understanding what the baby gets out of the play that you do. And it might be something really simple like singing Three Blind Mice, but when you then understand that what you're doing is solidifying the threeness of three, and helping a baby really understand that three looks like this if you go one way, and this if you go another way, but it's still three, and it can be 3 apples or 3 ducks, it's still 3. That becomes quite a motivating thing for parents, because it becomes quite dull doing some of the activities that you do with babies. It's quite boring. And so helping parents understand that actually doing something quite mundane is actually quite major, helps them feel more worthwhile, more needed. But the marketing side of things, apart from trying to differentiate between the other people who are doing activities but not necessarily going to the why, they're doing activities but they're not necessarily activities that build one on the other, so that there's the foundation and the scaffolding there, and they're not necessarily a new activity every single day for the 1,000 days. That differentiator is really important, but the getting out there is so hard, just so hard. Especially on a small budget. And I've done this without investment from anywhere else. So it's all about me and what I've achieved. And that's not necessarily like blow my own trumpet, because I would so love to have achieved more than I have. I have tried the Facebook advertising, but until you understand how to do Facebook advertising paid, it seems to be a complete waste of money. I have tried doing webinars and build the Facebook page, build the Instagram page, talk to people on LinkedIn, that sort of thing. But actually, I think the biggest traction is going to come through going into the health visitors, because it's a very much an app that's grounded in science. And working with the people who are the professionals. My aim for this app is that every parent gets it at check-in with the midwife the first time they go in. And that every time a professional talks to the parent, they also ask how they're getting on with their Oliiki learning. And that gives it status and puts education at the center of the whole parenting process, which means that by the time they get to school, talking about education in your parenting becomes a second nature thing. And that's how we're going to change society. So my marketing has now moved to be much more towards the B2B, to the professionals, to try and get bigger impact, but also get the support of the professional into delivering the app. And the other thing I've done is work with the universities. So I've got 3 universities that I'm working with on some research on the app, and having the app, because it's an ed tech app, having it grounded in research and having continual research done on it is fundamentally important in my world as an educator who's created ed tech.
And I would say as a consumer, it's important in mine too, because I don't want to be told just, hey, go sing Three Blind Mice to your kid. Like I can do that, but after I do it once, I'm just going to roll my eyes. And if I do it once, then I'm just going to be bored with it. But yeah, to have the actual science there to say, this is why you do it, the threes, all of that, then for me, it'd be a lot more motivating. So I think, and going that grassroots route, it's like, I see so many people burning money on Facebook ads and Google ads, and it's exactly right. It's like a science in and of itself of how to manipulate the algorithms and get it into the right people's hands. And you can't really play in that space unless you're willing to spend, thousands of dollars a month to, maybe see some return on it. It's really hard to get started. So I think doing the grassroots approach of actually getting it into the hands of doctors and having them be the advocate for it, I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know, how do your clients do it?
I think the ones that are successful have a similar approach where, okay. I think because there's, some people have an app where it's just like, I wanted the app to exist and whatever. And, I think you have to figure out who your market is. And that's always the hardest part. Like you hear all the venture capital, like Silicon Valley people always talk about product market fit. And that's exactly what you're trying to find. It's like, I know that you have this product and you know that it works and you know why it works, but it's trying to figure out how to find who is the actual audience and market for it. And I would say that anytime you have to go straight to the consumer to push it, there's so much there already that there's so many hurdles there that you have to overcome. Where I would think that if you just go straight to the professional, like go to the doctors, go to nurses, even going like we have in Minneapolis here, we have there's this branch of like new parent classes called AMA. Mm-hmm. And I would even think like going to something like that, if you have like the local people that are like, it's like, where are new parents going for information? And it's like, how do you then insert yourself into those positions? It's like that's exactly how I would do the marketing for this.
Yes, that's another thing I have done, which actually might be of interest to your listeners, is I've also gone down the affiliate route. Mm. So getting those small, like the classes that mums and dads might go to with their newborns, getting those owners of those businesses to earn off the back of it. So that they're pushing it in their classes, especially if they're like a rhyme time or a sort of one of those slightly more educational ones that are already doing kind of education activities. And then then they're motivated to do it, but they also bring it into their programs. But yeah, no, it's definitely a work in progress, the whole marketing, and not to be sneezed at and not to be under considered. And I really, if I look back on my journey, I launched my app and then basically got less and less confident as the year went on. Because the imposter syndrome got bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point that it got so unpleasant sitting here feeling a failure that I needed to be brave and go out and talk to somebody. And as soon as I did, the first 3 people I spoke to all went, "Oh, that sounds a really good idea and would be a really interest to us. Let me pass it on to my boss." Well, that was kind of enough to make jog me out of it to say, well, okay, it's now November. You've been doing this since February. Well done for finally talking to somebody, and then start actually talking to people. Had I not wasted that year being completely frightened and feeling a failure, I might well have made the impact that I'm looking to make quicker and, more successfully than I have done so far. But it's definitely a journey of emotion building an app. That's what I would say.
Well, yeah. I mean, we haven't even talked about the actual like nuts and bolts of building the app, and I think that's one thing that people really underestimate when they're coming to us for the first time. Is you even talked about investment before. How do you pay for that? But even just paying for the development, which is expensive in its own right. I think most people think, I'm building an app, and they think that the word app and the word business are two completely separate things. And really, when you're building an app, you are building a business, right?
I wish I'd known that before I started. Oh, good Lord.
And man, the imposter syndrome is totally real. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think we've actually talked about that much on this program. I even to this day, like the last couple of weeks, I've actually been feeling like heavy imposter syndrome, because we're redoing our website, and I'm going out and looking at all the other businesses that do similar things to what we do. And I'm looking at their websites and seeing they got to build this thing or they did that. And you just kind of forget, well, what have you been doing for the last year? You've got something that's pretty cool. It's so easy to fall in that trap. So you were saying that one way that you shook out of it was going out and talking to people. Did you, when you were starting the app, one thing that I see often is people are talking about, they often mention well, I need an NDA, and I'm not going to talk to anybody unless I sign a non-disclosure agreement or, anything like that. When you were getting out of your imposter syndrome, did you find that talking to people really, that was the thing that got you out of it, or was that not it?
Getting out of it was definitely about, okay, I've got a real life app. It's sitting in the App Store, has been since February. It's now November, and you've done all sorts of very busy things, but market your app. So I'd won awards. I'd gone on an EdTech accelerator. I'd worked out what my research was going to be. I had that signed off. I kind of knew so much about everything, but I had never really done anything. I'd done a couple of baby shows to try and tell mums and dads about it, but I hadn't really gone to the grown-up people, like the real professionals or anything. And I went on the internet and I got 3 charities that worked in this space. And I thought it was, on Monday, I decided I was going to do this. It was now Friday at 3:30. It was like, if I don't do it now. And I phoned all 3 charities, and all 3 of them, I got the secretary, but all 3 of them said, oh, yeah, no, that sounds like really interesting. I'll tell my boss. Now, ultimately, nothing particularly came of any of those 3 phone calls, but everything came of those 3 phone calls, because they made me realize that, 1, I wasn't so stupid, and 2, what I'd done wasn't so ridiculous, and 3, maybe what I was doing was going to actually help people, and I was doing them a disservice by not getting it out there. And it was what people wanted.
It for sure. It's so funny you say that, because I would imagine, I was going to ask you if any of the 3 actually talked to their boss about it, but I think even just the fact that their response was enough. You can kind of tell when somebody, especially a secretary, they're the absolute best at gatekeeping, and you can kind of get a hint as to whether they're giving you the fake, oh yeah, that sounds like a great app, versus a genuine, hey, this is a legitimately good idea. And even just that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. All 3 came back. All 3 came back to me. All 3 thought the idea was good, but it turned out that all 3 of the charities didn't really work in the space in the way that I thought they were going to work, so they weren't going to buy it. And that was another thing I've had to work out, is how do all these systems work? So I thought licensing it per person would be a good idea. But it turns out that these systems can't buy licenses. So I'm having to offer training. with free licenses.
And that was one thing I was going to actually talk about too, was monetization. You've mentioned a few different approaches so far. So you talked about kind of the affiliate program. You've talked, I know that you do have like in-app purchases inside the app. How did you come up with the monetization strategy? Is it really just like a classic, like throw something at the wall and see? Is strategy too like? Is that an accurate word for this, or was it just like, we need to make money? Let's throw crap at the wall and see what sticks. Like,
basically, the whole journey of the app has been like a really random journey, and oh my god, I wish I had so planned it. But anyway, I didn't. Basically, I left that African company and took gardening leave and mulled over what I should do. And in the end thought, well, the only way I know how to make impact and change is by building an app. But of course, I've already done it inside a big company with millions of dollars. And I've been the visionary, the content creator, the sort of like, it's got to be pink, not blue. No, I don't want it to look like that. I want it to look like this. But
classic product owner.
Oh, absolutely. But I hadn't actually done any of the techie stuff. So I went to a company who I had worked with before and said to them, how much would it be to build an app? And they came back, this was February, and they came back and said, well, we can have it done by March. And it'll cost this much. And it was like, oh, well, that's not too much. Okay, let's do it. As you said, business, app, two different things. I certainly wasn't doing a business. I was going to build an app. And, the mountain would come. And then I hid in my shed, Oliiki HQ, and
yep.
I wrote...
World headquarters.
Yeah, absolutely. You got it. And I wrote with a colleague, and it was the wonderful, wonderful time, but no consideration at all of like real people using this real thing. And then I realized I did actually have to get it out there, and how was I going to go and do it? And that, oh dear, this really was the B word. This was a business, and I would actually have to tell people about it, and that was a bit scary. So the monetization thing, I always knew that I wanted it to be, you could buy the whole thing or you could buy it in part. What I wanted and what I got were two different things, and that's something to consider, because I didn't design my app in great detail before I started. I got told what was doable with what we had. So therefore, what I got was blocks of content that you could purchase in-app. What I wanted was a monthly subscription. But, and I can see it, I understand the problem. The problem is because I'm doing 9 months and 2 years worth of content, that doesn't fall nicely into annual subscriptions or monthly subscriptions. But I'm sure there was a way around it, but I didn't have the confidence to explore it at that point. And I should have pushed harder with the app developers to understand really why we couldn't do what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was, when you join in on June the 4th and your baby is 1 month and 5 days old, that's fine. And it will stop when the baby reaches 2 regardless. I won't let you go beyond. But that's not what I was offered or was told was possible. So instead of pushing and saying, yeah, but that's what I really want, rather we had these blocks of 3 months and 6 months worth of content, which is kind of fine, but it's not what I wanted. And then the other option was that you could buy the whole thing for a reduced price. And that I wanted to do a buy one, give one. So I also had these codes that I could give away free apps, but I can't give away free bits of the app at this stage, and I can't give away a discount on the app at this stage via a code.
I was just thinking about because at any time, as an app developer myself, anytime I hear another app company say we can't do it and not give you reasons why, that's like my biggest pet peeve in the world. Because I think my job as an app developer is to explain things. Like I keep saying, like, I think a lot of people believe app development to be this thing where I wear a wizard's hat and have a long white beard and I just wave my wand and magic happens, you know? And it's like, that's not what software development is. It's just, there's a lot of logic behind it, but it's not anything that anyone can't grasp at least a high level understanding of why. And I think like the your specific point about a subscription, that would take a little bit of logic, and there'd be a lot of things we would have to kind of figure out. But that's not an unsolvable problem. And I mean, maybe if you were coming at me with this 20 years ago, there'd be some issues. But even 5 years ago, we have had the ability to, you know, set up a Stripe account, get a credit card, have our system charge automatically. You know, like that stuff is there. So it's to me, it's just like kind of maddening that somebody would just blanket state like, nope, we're going to do it this way, and it's not. It, like you said, it kind of works, but not really.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I didn't use people in the same country as me, and it was a lot to do with the fact that I didn't plan it. So it wasn't at the beginning that we had this conversation. It was right at the end. So I think it would have had implications on everything. And so it was a retrofit rather than a outfit. And I think, you know, that would be my biggest takeaway. If you're going to do something, get some paper and really make this app on paper, the buttons. And when you press this button, you go to this page here. And when you go and get, I wouldn't even go onto software to do it yet, because almost you kind of have to do the paper version to go, oh, yeah, no, that doesn't work first, before you then start speccing it up and having a little look at it on whatever software you would know to use. And I never did that at all. I had a PowerPoint from them. So I told them what I wanted. And it was a lot about it being blue or green or purple. And then that it needed to have the content in it the way that I wanted the content in it. But I didn't even consider the fact that I would need to have these calendars in it and that sort of thing. And even now I keep coming across things that I think, oh, yeah, that would have been so sensible. Like, for example, my logon journey is rubbish. It's horrible. And it would have been so easy to say, hi, welcome to the Oliiki app. We're so excited that you've decided to have us join your parenting journey. Tell me a bit about yourself. What's your name? That is so much nicer than a horrible form that pops up with no explanation.
Yeah, that does make a ton of sense to me. And I know that's one of the very first things that we do when someone comes to me with an idea is, okay, here's a whiteboard. Let's actually draw this out now. And and that exercise in and of itself is enough to kind of get you thinking the right direction of how can you actually build this thing. And I think your point too about don't use software right away, go to paper right away, is also really, there's something tactile about just being able to draw it out, and you can really kind of see the complexity get out of your mind and onto paper. There's just something more tangible than if you just abstract it away through a bunch of screens on a InVision project or whatever.
Yeah, I think the screens really get you stuck on what it looks like. Whereas paper, it looks scrappy, so you don't really care about that. You assume it's not going to, well, for me, I really care about what it looks like. So, for example, the font, that for me matters, which is why I spent hours on making my logo. The font on my app at the moment is not a font that makes me feel happy inside, but it's a font and it works. And it's probably quite good for, visually impaired, though it doesn't increase in size. Would I have thought that it needed to increase in size? Of course not. Didn't think of that. There's so many didn't think ofs. And I did it with a company outside of my local area. So we weren't face-to-face. We were doing it over email. And then I had one face-to-face weekend with them. But that was late. That was really late on. And it was my fault. I mean, it's nothing, I'm not, what they did was absolutely great. And it was what I kind of asked them to do. It's what I didn't do that has made the app be what it is. I mean, and they helped me design it, even though I didn't ask them to do that. So they did some really fab stuff, but it's just my inexperience of the whole thing and my keenness to get it out kind of shot myself in the foot. And I think I would have been better to spend much. They always say it's all in the preparation, isn't it?
Sometimes, yeah. Well, and I wouldn't be too hard on yourself too, because I think what you've got does it gets the job done, and it gets it out there. And I think that's one thing that people can shoot themselves in the foot the other way too, is where they over prepare and spend way too much time on well, this is version 1 of the app. It's garbage. Should do this, and they never put it out in the world. So the fact that you actually have an app out in the world that does the trick, and is it perfect? No. But is software ever perfect? No, not at all. It never is done.
And it does the job, and it can potentially earn money from it. And that money, that's basically what I decided was what we have is it doesn't make me feel warm and cozy inside, because I know that there's, one of the seams isn't quite straight on the dress or whatever that I'm sewing. But I know that it's okay, and it's helping parents. And that's kind of the point of it. It's not there to look this beautiful thing particularly, though that, of course, would make me feel happier if it was.
Right. Well, and you mentioned parents feeling confident after using it, and that it is getting some. There was some stat that I saw where it was like 98% of people that use the app seem to be they find a lot of value out of it. They get a lot out of it. How do you find incorporating that feed? Do you go out and actually solicit feedback from the users and find and incorporate their feedback into the app? Yes.
So what I did was pretty early on, I did a research project, because remember, my background is research. So I
stick to what you know.
Exactly. Don't go out of the tram lines, No need. So I got a group of parents, and I gave them the app, and I gave them a whole load of questions. They had 6 to 8 weeks, depending on when they joined the research. And we were looking at parental confidence, school readiness, and whether parents thought that their children would have the right skills to arrive at school and thrive, whether parents felt more confident by using the app, whether they felt that the app would help them determine if their children had any special needs. And our results were just really, really amazing, to the point that I kept checking that the software was working right. That people were coming back. Because literally, like 98% of the 98.3%, which meant one person, I think it was, said that. So one person didn't say, but everybody else said that the app made them feel much more confident as a parent. Which originally I was like, first person came through, it was like, oh, great, that's amazing. Second person came through, it was like, whoa, check this. 15th person, 16th person, it was like, okay, this is really boring. Tell me something interesting. But when you look at the research, it turns out that's absolutely huge, because parental confidence relates to postnatal depression. So high parental confidence, low postnatal depression. High parental confidence, high school readiness. That's kind of like, wow, it's like a major, major thing. And actually, that my next set of research is about something called parental self-efficacy, that my belief in myself as a parent and my ability to parent. And when it's high, outcomes are fantastic for your mental well-being and your child's mental well-being, and their academic success, their life success, their health, everything. It's like a phenomenal indicator. So the fact that 98.3% of our survey said that they felt more confident by using the app is a like whoop, 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 bells and whistles.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think like to your we've been talking a lot about, like, basically I've been talking anything about the the code of this app. It's all about the other stuff. But the research part of software development is so critical. And I mean, that's the whole UX, user experience industry, is built up upon doing research and actually getting the app in people's hands and seeing if it's working for them. And if not, how can you change it? And it's like, yeah, to be able to hit a home run, I guess it'd be like a grand slam, like 20 grand slams if you're getting 98.3%. It's like back to back grand slams. It's phenomenal, and it is something to be proud of. And it's like going back to talking about like imposter syndrome. Like that's one thing where you're like that'd be another way that you could shake that, is just like, holy cow, look at what I've built, and look at how useful it actually is, and making people feel confident in being parents.
Well, exactly, and then that makes the imposter syndrome even more stupid, because that was in March. And I didn't talk to anyone till November. And I won 2 awards in May. So the whole thing was beyond stupid. But that's imposter syndrome, isn't it? And
it's being human.
It is being human. And I think, the sooner you realize it, the quicker you realize it, the quicker you can get out of it, or work to get out of it. And I think for me, that imposter syndrome didn't come from my content. I'm absolutely confident about my content. And I know I might have slammed my app, what it looks like and how you log on to it. But that's the technical side of it. I haven't said anything negative about the content, because I can't tell you how proud I am of the content of that app and the impact that will have on the life outcomes for children and parents. What I found was that I've always said I don't do business. That's like me. That's my cry. I'm a teacher, not a business person. I do product. I don't do business. And actually, I've had to get over that and say, yeah, I do business. I've got a business. So best you crack on and do it. And I think, I'm really excited to be the other side of it, because it's rubbish being in it. And it's really nice to walk the other side of it.
Absolutely. I can't think of a better way to end this. That's beautifully said. Maybe one last question. We've talked about a few lessons that you've been able to take away during this app process. Are there any other tidbits or nuggets of things that you want to share with anyone who's kind of going through the same thing? They've got a great idea and they want it to be out in the world as an app. What would you say to those people? I
would be brave, first up. Go with it, but go with it knowing it's not just the price of the app, and start building your audience before you start building your app, and get on the social media and start speaking the stuff of your app. What is the message you're trying to convey? Start building that audience who are going, yeah, behind you. And then they're sitting there waiting for when the app launches. And you can go, ta-da! And then you'll have a business and run.
And you said you weren't a business person.
Well, I had to learn it. The wrong way round.
Gosh. Well, Clare, thank you so much for joining us today. How can people get in touch with you, and how can people download the app?
Okay, so the app is sitting on the App Store and on both app stores, actually. And it is Oliiki, which is spelt Oliiki. And we're at Oliiki.com because we could get the .com.
Nice.
And we're also on Facebook and Instagram under Oliiki, and on Twitter. Ooh, did I say that word out loud?
You said Oliiki out loud. I mean, Twitter is just kind of in the same boat, right?
I don't really do Twitter. It's against my religion, but I am on Twitter. And it's Oliiki_learning. And then on LinkedIn, it's Clare without an I, Stead, or Oliiki on LinkedIn. Happy to link up with anyone and to help and chat through any issues anyone's got, because it's pretty tough out there and it's lonely. So do it. Be brave. Don't be shy, but start building that audience really early.
Definitely. That's sound advice. And yeah, please, I'm glad I linked into you, because it's nice to lean on other people that have been through this before and to have that network going on. So
you don't know how pleased I am that you linked in with me. I know where you are now.
Now, okay, so you've got your third podcast in the bank here. So now you can turn around and start your own, and I can be a guest on that sometime.
Ooh, how exciting.
I can complain more about my 11-month-old. I was saying before the show that he's been up the last few days teething at like 1 a.m. So if you need someone to vent about their child going through that, happy to join you. I'm an expert at dealing with that.
Well,
Claire, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Tim, thanks ever so much for having me. It's been lots of fun.
A big thanks to Clare Stead for joining me on the podcast today. You can download Oliiki from the App Store and Play Store, and you can find out more about the app and Clare at oliiki.com. Also, be sure to follow Clare on all the social medias except Twitter. She's clearly not a fan of that one. Show notes for this episode can be found at constantvariables.co. You can get in touch with us by emailing hello@constantvariables.co. I'm at Tim Bornholt on Twitter, and the show is at CV_podcast. Today's episode was edited by the affable Jordan Daoust. One quick favor. I've said this a few times already, but if you've got 2 minutes, please head over to the Apple Podcasts app and leave us a review. We made it even easier for you than going into the app. You can just go to constantvariables.co/review. We take you right there. This really does help us rate higher in the charts and have more people find our show organically. So please, if you got any value out of this show at all, head over to the Apple Podcasts app, head to constantvariables.co/review, leave us a rating and a review, and we would greatly appreciate that. This episode was brought to you by the Jed Mahonis Group. If you're looking for a technical team who can help make sense of mobile software development, give us a shout at jmg.mn.